The United States, a beacon of freedom, a champion of liberty. The narrative is comforting, familiar. But beneath this carefully constructed facade lies a darker truth. A truth where the government, sworn to protect its citizens, becomes their silent oppressor. This isn't about conspiracy theories whispered in dark corners. This is about documented facts, hidden in plain sight. A chilling reality where personal liberties are eroded, dissent is silenced, and the very essence of democracy is under threat. We believe in our right to privacy, to freedom of thought and speech. These are the cornerstones of a just and equitable society, yet these fundamental rights are being systematically undermined by the very entity entrusted to safeguard them. The government, through its vast and often unchecked power, operates in the shadows. It gathers information on its citizens, manipulates public perception, and silences dissenting voices, all under the guise of national security and public interest. This essay delves into the unsettling reality of government overreach in the United States. It examines the erosion of privacy, the spread of misinformation, and the suppression of dissent. These are not isolated incidents, but rather a disturbing pattern of behavior, a pattern that threatens the very fabric of American democracy. This is a call to action, an urgent plea to confront these uncomfortable truths. The time for complacency is over. The future of freedom hangs in the balance. The erosion of trust in government is not a new phenomenon. History is replete with examples of governments betraying the trust of their citizens. From Watergate to the Pentagon Papers, the United States has experienced its own share of scandals and cover-ups. Advances in technology have provided governments with unprecedented tools for surveillance and control. It allows for the free flow of information, but also enables governments to monitor online activity, censor content, and suppress dissent. They are used to monitor activists, journalists, and even ordinary citizens who dare to criticize the government. When citizens feel that their every move is being watched, it creates a chilling effect on free speech and assembly. A society where citizens are free to express their views without fear of reprisal. The purpose of this essay is not to instill fear, but to awaken awareness. The first step towards addressing a problem is acknowledging its existence. The United States government, despite its rhetoric, has engaged in practices that undermine the very principles it claims to uphold. It is time for citizens to confront this reality and demand better. This essay will delve into the specifics of government overreach, providing concrete examples and evidence to support these claims. It will explore the historical context of these actions, examining how the balance of power has shifted over time. Most importantly, it will offer potential solutions and avenues for recourse, because silence is not an option. The time to act is now. The erosion of privacy, the spread of misinformation, and the suppression of dissent are not partisan issues. They are fundamental threats to the fabric of American democracy. It is the duty of every citizen, regardless of their political affiliation, to defend the principles upon which this nation was founded. The right to privacy, freedom of speech, and the right to dissent are not privileges granted by the government. They are inalienable rights enshrined in the Constitution. We must hold our elected officials accountable. We must demand transparency and oversight of government agencies. We must educate ourselves and others about the dangers of unchecked power. The future of freedom depends on it. We move through the world, often unaware of the invisible eyes tracking our every move. Surveillance has become ubiquitous. Hidden cameras capture our faces. Our online activities, our purchases, our conversations are all meticulously recorded and analyzed. The very technology that promised to connect us has become a tool for mass surveillance. Our smartphones have morphed into tracking devices. Social media platforms have transformed into vast data mines. Every click, every like, every comment feeds an insatiable hunger for information. This mass surveillance is not random, it is targeted, systematic, and relentless. Government agencies cast a wide net. They sweep up data on millions, violating our privacy. It erodes the foundation of a free and open society. Section 2. The digital dragnet. The government's surveillance extends far beyond our physical movements and online activities. It reaches into our digital lives, intercepting communications, accessing personal data, and building profiles on us. This digital dragnet operates largely in secret, hidden from public scrutiny. The NSA's PRISM program is a prime example of this overreach. Leaked by Edward Snowden in 2013, PRISM revealed the extent of government surveillance. Secret court orders allowed the NSA to access servers of major tech companies. This access enabled the collection of emails, messages, and other sensitive information. The revelation sent shockwaves through the tech industry and the public. The government had been operating a massive surveillance program without public consent. The chilling effect of mass surveillance impacts all of us, eroding our basic freedoms. It undermines the principles of a democratic society. When we know we are being watched, we self-censor. We avoid expressing dissenting views or engaging in controversial topics. This self-censorship has a profound impact on our society. Journalists and activists are particularly vulnerable. The knowledge of being monitored can lead them to avoid certain topics. This weakens the public's ability to hold the government accountable. The chilling effect extends beyond political speech. It impacts our personal relationships and social interactions. We become less likely to take risks or challenge the status quo. This stifles creativity and innovation, impacting arts, culture, and scientific progress. The erosion of privacy has real-world consequences for society. It creates a climate of fear and suspicion, undermining trust in institutions. It stifles the free exchange of ideas essential for a healthy democracy. Section 4. Eroding the Fourth Amendment. The Fourth Amendment to the United States Constitution protects citizens from unreasonable searches and seizures. It requires the government to obtain a warrant based on probable cause before searching our homes, our belongings, or our persons. However, the rise of mass surveillance has eroded this fundamental right, allowing the government to collect vast amounts of information about us without our knowledge or consent. The government has justified its surveillance programs by arguing that they are necessary to combat terrorism and protect national security. However, the evidence suggests that these programs are often ineffective in achieving their stated goals. They result in the collection of massive amounts of irrelevant data while failing to prevent acts of terrorism. Instead, they serve another purpose: to monitor and control the population, to stifle dissent, and to maintain the status quo. The courts, tasked with upholding the Constitution, have struggled to keep pace with the rapid advances in surveillance technology. In some cases, they have upheld the legality of government surveillance programs, often relying on secret interpretations of the law. In other cases, they have ruled that certain programs are unconstitutional, only to see the government find new and creative ways to circumvent these rulings. The erosion of the Fourth Amendment is a dangerous precedent. It creates a slippery slope where the government's power to surveil its citizens continues to expand unchecked. This unchecked power poses a grave threat to our freedom and liberty. It undermines the very foundations of a democratic society. Section 5. A legacy of surveillance. The United States has a long and troubled history of government surveillance. From the Alien and Sedition Acts of the 1790s to the McCarthyist witch hunts of the 1950s, the government has repeatedly used its power to silence dissent and target individuals based on their political beliefs. This history should serve as a cautionary tale, a reminder of the dangers of unchecked government power. The rise of mass surveillance in the 21st century represents a new and dangerous chapter in this history. Advances in technology have given the government unprecedented tools for monitoring and controlling the population. These tools, if left unchecked, have the potential to erode our fundamental freedoms and transform the United States into a surveillance state. The legacy of government surveillance is one of fear, suspicion, and the suppression of dissent. It is a legacy that we must confront and challenge if we are to preserve our freedom and liberty for future generations. The time to act is now. Section 1. The Information War. We live in an era of unprecedented access to information. The internet connects us to a vast sea of data. Yet this deluge brings a new danger, discerning truth from falsehood. This is the information war, waged with narratives and lies. The government is a major player in this war. Through propaganda, it shapes opinion and maintains power. This is subtle manipulation, exploiting fears and desires. It extends to domestic issues, influencing opinions on healthcare and climate change. The goal is to control the message and shape the narrative. Manufacturing consent. Coined by Noam Chomsky and Edward S. Herman, the term describes how mass media serves as a tool for propaganda and social control. They identified 5 filters shaping news: ownership, advertising, sourcing, flack, and anti-communism/anti-terrorism. These filters ensure news aligns with government and corporate interests. The government manipulates media through leaks, briefings, and journalist relationships. Social media complicates this, allowing for new propaganda and manipulation opportunities. Section 3. Propaganda, masquerading as news. The line between news and propaganda has become increasingly blurred. Government agencies use PR firms and media outlets to spread propaganda through credible channels. This often takes the form of news articles, documentaries, or social media posts promoting a specific agenda. Disguising propaganda as objective news is highly effective. Stories are planted with journalists who may be unaware they are spreading propaganda. These stories are then picked up by other news outlets, spreading the message widely. Fake news websites mimic legitimate sources, promoting sensationalized stories. The goal is to sow confusion and distrust in all media, making truth hard to discern. Echo chambers and filter bubbles. The internet, once a tool for democratization, is now fragmented and polarized. Social media algorithms create echo chambers, reinforcing our biases. This makes meaningful dialogue difficult. Governments exploit these echo chambers to spread misinformation. Micro-targeting enhances this, tailoring messages to specific audiences. This fragmentation threatens democracy, fostering polarization and extremism. Section 5. Drowning in disinformation. The internet has become a breeding ground for disinformation, spreading false or misleading information to deceive and manipulate the public. Disinformation campaigns are often carried out by state actors or political operatives to advance agendas or sow discord. They exploit social media to spread their message, often with devastating consequences. Disinformation can take many forms, from fabricated news articles to doctored images and videos. It plays on fears and biases, making it more likely to be believed and shared. The goal is to sow confusion, distrust, and cynicism, making it hard to discern truth from falsehood. The proliferation of disinformation poses a serious threat to democracy and society. When people can't trust information, meaningful dialogue becomes impossible. This undermines the foundations of a free and open society. The First Amendment guarantees the right to freedom of speech. This right protects the free exchange of ideas, even controversial ones. Yet, the government often seeks to silence dissent and suppress information. Censorship, under the guise of national security, threatens a free society. It ranges from outright bans to subtle intimidation. Agencies may silence media, withhold funding, or pressure companies to censor. This creates a chilling effect, fostering fear and self-censorship. Classifying information as secret is another form of censorship. The government claims it's to protect national security, but it often shields wrongdoing and prevents public accountability. Overuse of secrecy erodes democracy and fosters abuses of power. Online, the government blocks websites and filters content. This online censorship threatens freedom of expression in the digital age. The United States has a long and troubled history of suppressing dissent. From the Alien and Sedition Acts of 1798 to the McCarthyist witch hunts of the 1950s, the government has repeatedly sought to silence those who dared to challenge the status quo. This pattern of repression continues to this day, albeit in more subtle and insidious forms. The FBI's COINTELPRO program, exposed in the 1970s, revealed the shocking extent of these activities. During World War I, the Espionage Act of 1917 and the Sedition Act of 1918 were used to imprison thousands for expressing anti-war views. The government's suppression of dissent has also targeted artists, writers, and musicians. Whistleblowers play a vital role in a democracy, exposing wrongdoing and corruption, yet they are often treated like criminals, facing retaliation and imprisonment. This deters others from coming forward, allowing corruption to flourish. The government uses espionage laws to silence whistleblowers. Chelsea Manning was sentenced to 35 years for leaking classified documents. Edward Snowden fled after exposing NSA's mass surveillance programs. Critics argue these prosecutions silence dissent and prevent public awareness of government wrongdoing. Section 4. When protest becomes a crime. The right to peaceful assembly is enshrined in the First Amendment. Yet the government has repeatedly sought to restrict and suppress protests. Protests have played a vital role in shaping American society. Recently, laws criminalize certain forms of protest, increasing surveillance. The government's crackdown is often justified in the name of public safety. The right to protest is essential for a healthy democracy. Section 5. The price of silence. The suppression of dissent, whether through censorship, the persecution of whistleblowers, or the crackdown on protests, comes at a steep price. When dissenting voices are silenced, when wrongdoing is concealed, and when citizens are afraid to speak out for fear of reprisal, democracy itself is threatened. The erosion of these fundamental freedoms creates a climate of fear, conformity, and apathy, where corruption can flourish and abuses of power can go unchecked. The price of silence is paid not only by those whose voices are silenced, but by all of us. When we allow the government to suppress dissent, we undermine our own ability to hold those in power accountable. We become complicit in a system that values secrecy over transparency, conformity over dissent, and order over justice. The fight for freedom of speech, freedom of the press, and the right to peaceful assembly is a never-ending struggle. It requires constant vigilance, courage, and a willingness to speak out against injustice, even when it is difficult or dangerous to do so. The future of our democracy depends on it. The United States, founded on liberty and justice, faces a profound truth. The government, once a protector, has become a silent oppressor. Digital dragnets and propaganda erode our freedoms. The illusion of privacy is shattered. The Fourth Amendment is eroded, prioritizing security over liberty. When does security become tyranny? The information war assaults our ability to discern truth. Government propaganda shapes narratives, manipulating perception. Censorship chills, whistleblowers are demonized, dissent silenced. The right to speak truth to power is under assault. This is the creeping shadow of authoritarianism. Section 2. Reclaiming our birthright. We stand at a crossroads. The path forward is clear. We can choose to remain passive or resist. The hour for action is now. Demand transparency and accountability. Hold our leaders accountable. Equip ourselves with critical thinking skills. Stand together, united against oppression. Contact your representatives. Make your voice heard. Apathy is the enemy of freedom. Choose the path of courage and resistance. Let the beacon of liberty shine bright.